You took my son. You reached into the hands of the gods, and you stole my child. Admit it." The words hit Adaeze like a hot slap across the face. "Bring out my son!" The woman screamed again, her voice cracking at the edges like dry harmattan earth splitting under the sun. "His name is Obiora. He has a small dark mark behind his left ear. Bring him out now, or I will pull this compound down with my bare hands and my bare teeth." Adaeze's husband, Emeka, rushed out from inside the house. He had heard the commotion from the bedroom where he had been resting, and came out in his singlet and trousers, his face still creased with sleep, his eyes blinking against the afternoon brightness. "What is happening here?" he demanded, looking at Adaeze, then at the screaming woman, then back at Adaeze. "Who is this woman? What does she want?" But Adaeze said nothing. To truly understand what Adaeze did, you must first sit with what she suffered. She had been married to Emeka for 9 full years, 9 long, slow, grinding years of hoping and praying and trying and failing and trying again. In those 9 years, she had visited 3 different hospitals in Abuja, 2 prayer houses, 1 Islamic herbal healer her neighbor swore by, and a German fertility specialist in Wuse too, who charged 50,000 naira just for the consultation, and then told her, in a flat clinical voice, what she had already feared deep in her bones, that her fallopian tubes were severely damaged, and the chances of a natural pregnancy were very low. Not impossible. She held onto that thin thread of possibility the way a drowning woman holds onto anything her fingers can find. Emeka was not a wicked man. He did not beat her. He did not insult her openly. But he was a man raised inside a culture and a family, where children were not simply a blessing, they were evidence. Evidence that a marriage was real and functioning. Evidence that a woman was complete. His mother, a wide woman with a loud laugh and sharp eyes, visited every Christmas and left every January with a fresh comment wrapped inside a warm smile and a long hug. "Adaeze, my daughter, you are looking so healthy and strong. You are eating well. God will do it for you this year. We are praying." The words always sounded like kindness. They were not always kindness. At church, women who had sat beside Adaeze in the same pew for years began standing for Thanksgiving, one after another. Twins, baby boys, baby girls, and Adaeze would clap her hands and smile, her wide smile, and whisper genuine congratulations, sit on the floor of her bathroom with the tap running so nobody would hear, and cry until she was completely hollow. She tried absolutely everything available to her. She drank bitter herbal concoctions that turned her stomach inside out and stained her teeth brown for weeks. She placed the Bible under her pillow and slept on it every night for 40 days as a prophet instructed. She fasted so seriously that she fainted at her office desk at the Ministry of Finance one Wednesday afternoon, and her colleagues panicked and called an ambulance, and she had to explain to her supervisor, with a drip in her arm, that she was fine, just tired. She gave her last 300,000 naira savings money she had been keeping carefully for 2 years to a powerful prophet in Nyanya who had a large following and a television program. The prophet told her that if she planted a seed of faith, God would plant a seed in her womb within 90 days. She gave the money. She counted the 90 days. Nothing came. Not even a late period. Not even a false alarm. Just silence. The same silence her womb had kept for 9 years. Until an evening in October, when Mama Tunde, the older woman who lived in the last room of their compound and had seen enough of life to speak plainly, pulled Adaeze aside after everyone else had gone inside. The 2 women stood in the compound under a mango tree, while rain threatened in the distance, and Mama Tunde spoke in a careful, low voice. "There is a place," Mama Tunde said, not looking directly at her. "It is outside Abuja, past Gwagwalada, off the main road. The priest there does not collect money. He does not write your name in any book. He does not ask you questions that embarrass you. He simply listens and performs the rites. The gods there are very old. They have been answering the prayers of women since before our grandmothers were born. Adaeze told herself firmly that she would never go. She was a baptized, confirmed, church-going Christian woman. She had a God and a Bible, and a pastor who prayed for her by name. She was not the kind of woman who visited shrines. But the Sunday after Emeka's youngest brother arrived from the village with his new wife, a girl of barely 22, who was already visibly 3 months pregnant, and the entire extended family gathered in Adaeze's living room and celebrated noisily, while Adaeze moved between the kitchen and the parlor, carrying plates of food and bottles of drink, and smiling, always smiling that night. After everyone had gone home, and Emeka was snoring peacefully, and the house was quiet and dark, Adaeze lay on her back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, and felt something inside her chest finally give way. She got up quietly. She found a piece of paper. She knocked on Mama Tunde's door and asked for the directions to the shrine. The shrine sat at the far edge of a dense patch of forest, a long distance from the nearest tarred road. There was no signboard announcing it, no concrete gate, no generator humming in the background. Just a narrow dirt path through tall, whispering grass, lit only by a single kerosene lamp hanging from a forked branch at the entrance, throwing long orange shadows across the ground. The priest was a short man, older than old, with skin like cracked leather and eyes that looked as though they had witnessed 1,000 private griefs. He studied Adaeze when she entered his compound in the same quiet way a doctor studies a patient, before speaking, reading things she had not said, weighing things she did not know she was carrying. "You have come for a child," he said at last. It was not a question. It never was with men like him. "Yes," Adaeze whispered, her voice barely surviving the night air. He gave her bitter water to drink from a clay cup that had no handle. He pressed white chalk marks onto both her wrists in careful patterns. He burned something dry and sweet-smelling over hot coals and fanned the smoke over her head and shoulders with a woven fan. He spoke his prayers in an old dialect she did not recognize, but the rhythm and the depth of it reached inside her chest and settled something that had been shaking for years. Before she left, he stopped her at the mouth of the path and raised one finger between them. "Hear me well before you walk away," he said. His voice was even and unhurried. "What the gods give freely must never be taken by force. Whatever they place before you as a gift, wait for the giving. Do not reach out and take what has not yet been offered. Those who do that answer for it." Adaeze nodded. She thanked him. She walked back through the tall grass to her car and drove home through the empty Abuja roads, arriving well past midnight. She told Emeka she had been at a late women's fellowship prayer meeting. Weeks passed. She felt nothing different. A month came and went. She began to feel embarrassed for having gone in the first place. She bundled the chalk-marked wrapper into a corner of the wardrobe behind old clothes and told herself to let it go and move forward. Then one night, 6 weeks later, she woke from a deep sleep at 2 in the morning with a feeling she had no words for. A pull. Not pain, something else. A direction. The way a compass needle swings and holds. She lay still for 10 minutes fighting it. Then, she got up, dressed silently in the darkness, and drove back out of Abuja toward the shrine without fully understanding why her hands were on the steering wheel. The shrine compound was empty and completely still when she arrived. The priest was nowhere. The lamp was burning as always at the entrance. Everything was silent except the trees and the night insects. And then she heard it. Near the altar, the wide flat stone draped in white cloth and decorated with fresh palm fronds, a sound, small and thin and trembling. The most helpless sound that exists anywhere in this world. A newborn baby, wrapped carefully in white cloth, placed gently on the altar stone, chest rising and falling with slow, peaceful breaths. A tiny face. She looked to her left, she looked to her right, she looked behind her and then at the trees. Nobody. The priest's words came back to her, clearly, fully. She pushed them down into a place beneath her conscious mind. She told herself this child had been abandoned. She told herself the gods had placed this answer on the altar specifically for her. She bent down, lifted the child against her chest, pulled her outer wrapper around him, and ran. For 7 months, Adaeze lived inside the most beautiful and most dangerous lie she had ever constructed. She told Emeka that she had been secretly pregnant, that she had hidden it from him out of deep fear of getting his hopes up and then losing the pregnancy as she feared she would, that she had delivered early while he was in Port Harcourt for a 2-week work assignment, attended only by a trusted private midwife. Emeka stared at her for one long searching moment. Then he looked down at the child in her arms, round-faced, calm, and perfect, and whatever question was forming behind his eyes simply dissolved. He held his son for the first time and broke down completely. His shoulders shook. He made no effort to hide it. His mother arrived from the village within 4 days and took over the kitchen for a full week. Extended family members came from Enugu, from Lagos, from Kaduna. There was a proper naming ceremony with a canopy in the compound and a live band and enough food to feed the entire street. There was a Thanksgiving service at their church the following Sunday, where the pastor asked Adaeze and Emeka to stand before the entire congregation and be celebrated. People who had whispered behind their hands for years now arrived at the gate, carrying gift bags and wide, generous smiles. Adaeze moved through it all, wrapped in glass. She smiled. She danced at the ceremony with the baby on her back. She answered questions about the pregnancy with practiced, careful answers. She accepted the hugs and the congratulations and the God is faithful declarations with lowered, grateful eyes. But every night, alone in the dark while Emeka slept, she lay still and felt the guilt resting on her chest. She told herself many things to survive it. That the baby had been abandoned by someone who did not want him. That she was giving him a life he would never have had otherwise. Then the small incidents began. A heavy ceiling fan detached from its fitting one hot afternoon and crashed to the ground, landing precisely 2 inches from where the baby lay sleeping on a mat below it. Emeka blamed the old installation. Adaeze cleaned up the mess and could not stop her hands from trembling for the rest of the day. A cat appeared at their compound 3 consecutive nights, sitting just outside the bedroom window, and cried in long, mournful wails until the sky began to lighten. Emeka threw water at it each time and went back to sleep. Adaeze lay listening until dawn arrived. Then, the dreams found her and refused to let go. The same dream, arriving faithfully each night. A woman wrapped in white, completely faceless, standing at the foot of the bed in the dark, not speaking, not threatening, simply standing with both arms stretched forward, reaching, waiting, wanting. Adaeze would wake from it, gasping and soaked through. Her heart so loud in her ears she was certain Emeka must be able to hear it. She began losing weight rapidly. Her cheekbones sharpened. She pushed food around her plate and ate very little. Emeka noticed and told her she was overworking herself and needed rest. He brought her vitamins from the pharmacy. He was a good man. He did not know that the thing consuming his wife could not be cured by vitamins or rest. It was Mama Tunde who finally put the pieces together. She had stepped out one afternoon to buy onions from the woman at the junction when she noticed a thin young woman moving slowly along the street, stopping at every electric pole and compound wall to paste a handwritten paper. Mama Tunde collected one of the papers from a pole and stood on the roadside to read it. It described a missing baby boy, newborn at the time of disappearance. A small distinctive mark behind the left ear. Last seen at a shrine past Gwagwalada on a specific night 7 months prior. A phone number at the bottom of the page, written twice. Mama Tunde read the paper once. She looked down the street toward Adaeze's compound. She read the paper again very slowly. Then she folded it carefully and put it inside her blouse pocket and went home without buying the onions. She did not sleep that night. She sat in her small room and argued with herself until almost 4 in the morning. Adaeze was her friend. She had watched this woman suffer in ways that most people never see. She had been the one to send her to the shrine. Part of whatever happened was, she felt, sitting on her own hands. But a child, a mother without her child. 7 months. On the 4th day, Mama Tunde went and found Ngozi. What she heard rearranged everything she thought she understood about the situation. Ngozi was 24 years old. She had carried her pregnancy alone after her husband abandoned her when she was 5 months along, packed his things quietly on a Tuesday, and left without a note. She had delivered the baby with the help of an elderly neighbor and named him Obiora, meaning the community knows what is good. The visit to the shrine had been an old protective ritual passed down from her grandmother. You carry the child to the altar at night. You lay him down. You pray the old words over him. The gods press their mark of protection onto the child's spirit, and from that night forward, no evil, no early death, no misfortune can find him easily. Then you pick him back up before sunrise and go home. She had walked away from the altar for barely 20 minutes to find a private spot in the trees. 20 minutes! When she came back, the altar was empty. The white cloth was there. The palm fronds were there. The lamp was burning. Her child was gone. She had searched every corner of that forest in the dark, screaming his name knowing full well he was too young to answer, screaming anyway because there was nothing else her body knew how to do. 7 months of police stations where officers leaned back in their chairs and looked at her with amusement when she mentioned the shrine. 7 months of sleeping on a mat on her neighbor's floor because she could not bear to go back to the room where she had prepared his small cot. 7 months of waking each morning and reaching beside her before she was fully conscious, expecting to feel a warm body and finding only the cold mat. Mama Tunde brought Ngozi directly to the compound the following morning. And that was the exact morning Adaeze returned from Wuse Market with tomatoes on her hip and found a barefoot, broken, 7 months devastated mother standing at her gate announcing the truth to the whole street. The neighborhood gathered around them like water filling a bowl. The shrine priest was summoned. He arrived on foot, unhurried, as though he had been expecting this summons for some time. He stood in the middle of the compound, looked carefully at the baby Emeka was now clutching protectively against his chest, and said only 4 words. That is her child. He pointed at Ngozi without hesitation. Then he turned his quiet eyes to Adaeze. There was no anger in them. No satisfaction, only the heavy, settled sadness of a man who had seen this exact kind of story end this exact kind of way before. I told you clearly, he said. What the gods give freely must never be taken by force. Emeka turned to face his wife. The compound was absolutely silent. Every person standing there held completely still. Adaeze. His voice came out low and controlled, which was somehow far worse than shouting would have been. Tell me this is not the truth. Adaeze looked at her husband. She looked at Ngozi, who was staring at the baby with shaking hands pressed over her own mouth. She looked at the faces of her neighbors, people she had greeted every morning for years. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out, because the truth had already spoken far louder than she ever could. They gave the baby back that same afternoon. There was no court, no lengthy back and forth, no negotiation conducted across the table. When Emeka walked across the compound and placed the child gently, carefully into Ngozi's outstretched arms, and Ngozi pressed her face into the soft warmth of the baby's neck and her entire body folded inward, people who had come purely for the spectacle found themselves looking away. Several were wiping their eyes. Even the children standing at the gate were silent. Emeka walked back inside the house without speaking to anyone. He closed the bedroom door. He sat on the edge of the bed in the growing dark of the late afternoon and looked at the empty cot beside the wall. Adaeze remained outside until the compound cleared. Then she came inside and sat in the parlor. The naming ceremony photographs were still on the wall. The small yellow baby shoes were still on the shelf. Everything was exactly where it had been that morning when she left for the market, and the world was still arranged the way her lie had arranged it. She sat in that parlor for a very long time. Emeka did not speak to her that day, not that evening, not over dinner that she cooked and he did not eat. He sat in the dark of the parlor long after she had gone to the bedroom. She lay on the bed and listened to the sound of the house being silent around her. That night she knelt on the floor beside the bed and prayed differently than she had ever prayed before. Not the urgent, bargaining, desperate prayers she had been sending upward for 9 years. Something much quieter. Something stripped of performance and demand. She prayed for Ngozi and for Obiora, that the months apart would heal cleanly and leave no lasting mark on the child's spirit. She prayed for Emeka, who had been handed grief he did nothing to deserve. She prayed for the neighbors, for understanding she had no right to ask for. And then, slowly, painfully, she prayed for herself. Not for a child, not yet, but simply for peace. For the exhausted, hollow, desperate woman she had become to find her way back to solid ground. Emeka did not leave her. That decision quietly astonished everyone on the street. But he stayed. He told her plainly, sitting across from her at the kitchen table one morning 2 weeks later, that what she had done was wrong in a way he lacked words large enough to contain, that there was no justification he could construct for it, no matter how much he understood her pain. But he had also watched this woman suffer beside him for 9 years, and he was not willing to walk away from her at the bottom. "I want the woman back that I married," he said. "Bring her back and we will find a way through this together." It was not easy. There were weeks of silence between them. There were counseling sessions at a Christian therapist's office in Garki, where both of them sat stiffly and said difficult things into the air. There were nights when the distance between their two sides of the bed felt enormous, but they kept going back, week after week. Ngozi did not pursue criminal charges. When her neighbors and her lawyer and various well-meaning people pressed her to do so, she listened quietly and then shook her head. "I have my son back in my arms," she said each time. "That is the thing I was crying for. Sending that woman to prison will not give me back the 7 months I lost. Only God can settle what remains." As for Adaeze, she and Emeka began formal adoption proceedings nearly 2 years after everything had settled. The paperwork was slow and complicated and expensive. Emeka cursed quietly at government offices. Adaeze carried biscuits in her bag to every appointment to keep herself calm while they waited. The little girl they brought home was 3 years old. She called Adaeze Mama on the very first evening, as easily and naturally as if she had always known what to call her. Adaeze held her daughter close, and finally, after everything, all the years of pain, all the desperate roads she had walked down, all the wrong she had done, and the consequences she had carried, understood what the old priest had been trying to tell her at the mouth of that dark, lamplit path. What is truly meant for you does not require you to break another person's life to obtain it. It does not require theft, deception, or force. Desperation is a fire. It burns away your patience, your judgment, and your character until you are capable of things your peaceful self would never recognize. The hunger for what we do not yet have can quietly transform the most gentle and loving person into someone unrecognizable. But grace, real grace, the kind that is patient and unhurried and arrives without fanfare, has a way of finding you at last, not when you grab for it, but when you finally, honestly, open your hands and let go. And that is the only miracle truly worth waiting for.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please help us reach 1,000 subscribers by clicking the subscribe button. Subscription is absolutely free and it really supports this channel.